Welcome back to Phillips Hot Rod Garage. Alright guys, this is the second video in the series on this little 1940 Flathead V8. So this is part 2 of the Flathead Revival. It is a hot day in South Alabama. Somebody asked me the other day if I ever open the doors to the shop and make any videos with the doors open. I'm like, no. It's supposed to be like 99 today for the high. I just checked and it's currently 97. So it's too hot for burning brush piles, I'll tell you that. And according to old Rat Fink over here, I'm about 10 degrees cooler in the shop than it is outside. Unlike work this week where it was 105 in the paint booth. And I got my big old Max Air fan going on high, so I think we're gonna be all right today. Might want to get some of this. And this video goes out on July the 2nd. So I hope all you guys have a great 4th of July. And if you're in a hot climate like me, be sure to stay cool, don't get too hot. All right, so what I want to do in this video is I want to get the rust out of the cylinders, get them cleaned up good. I want to get the deck surface cleaned up, get all the valves cleaned up, tops of the pistons cleaned up. Now somebody else started on this side. I didn't clean this side up. Somebody else had already started on this. I did clean up a little bit right here with a wire brush just to see how the wire brush was going to do. But the guys I got it from told me that they pulled the heads off of it just to check for cracks, and that's the only reason it has been took apart. So hopefully that's the case. So what I want to do is I want to clean this thing up as good as I can so I can check for any visible signs of cracks, because I don't want to continue wasting any more time on this engine if there's any visible signs of cracks between the valves and the cylinders or any other cracks that I can find. I don't see any so far, but we're going to clean it up real good, see if we can find any. So let's get started getting it cleaned up. All right, so I got a few things here I can use. I got some gasket remover from CRC. It's supposed to also break carbon loose, so maybe that might help clean the top of the pistons up. I don't know, we might try it. I got Deep Creep by Seafoam. I've never used this product, but I've been watching some videos on it. They say it works pretty good. That might help loosen up some stuck stuff. WD-40, of course we know that's good stuff. And then Lucas multi-purpose parts cleaner and degreaser, some gum out jet spray, carbon choke cleaner, parts cleaner. I already had this. I bought that because I did not remember I had this. PB Blaster, good stuff. O'Reilly's brake parts cleaner. This stuff right here does clean parts up pretty good. Works a little different than carbon choke cleaner, but it does do a pretty good job on some stuff. Engine degreaser, the original formula from Gunk. That always works pretty good. And then of course some Marvel mystery oil, pour down around the rings. That's supposed to help loosen your rings up. And there's some other stuff, of course, that people like to use, but I always like to have a variety of different stuff sitting around the shop. I got a couple of packs of wire brushes here. Right here I got some plastic razor blades, some standard razor blades to scrape with. And then I got a couple of different grits of 3M Scotch-Brite pads, a couple of different wire brushes here. So I think we got what it takes to get started. All right, so I'm gonna start by spraying some of the CRC gasket remover on this intake gasket. We'll let it soak a while. I don't want to get any of it on this little plate right here, because I found out a while back that this gasket remover will remove powder coat. I did not know that it would until I started researching how to get powder coat off of an aluminum intake manifold that I bought that had about 2 layers of powder coat on it. So I found out, of course, off YouTube that stuff right there will cut powder coat, and it did a great job I put that gasket remover over onto that aluminum intake, sprayed it on that powder coat, and it looked like you put paint stripper on it. Now I did try some paint stripper. Paint stripper would not touch the powder coat, but that gasket remover right there took every bit of it off. It's pretty good stuff. So looks like it's working real good right here too. Probably just let it soak another minute or two and then come back to it. So let's do some scraping on this deck surface here. Just trying to get the big stuff off, and I'll come back and scrape it with a razor blade. All right, so that's been soaking a few minutes. Let's try it again. All right, that looks pretty good. So I want to try these two products here. This Deep Creep by Seafoam and regular old gunk engine degreaser. I'm gonna spray one of them in one place, one of them in another. See which one I like the best. All right, there's the degreaser from Gunk. Just let it run on down, go where it wants to go. All right, now let's try this Deep Creep from Seafoam. Okay, 3M Scotch pad. Let's give it a good scrub here. All right, now let's go over here to the Seafoam side. Give it a good scrub. Well, I don't know if it's gonna make a big difference, but the Seafoam smells better. I know that. Definitely smells better. All right, let's take a look and see which one looks the best. Well, that's perfectly acceptable. Looks plenty good enough for a good gasket seal. Let's try this side where the Seafoam was. Well, from what I'm seeing, they're both acceptable. But I almost think that the gunk degreaser looks a little bit better on this surface. I don't know. It almost looks better to me. But both look pretty close, so I think either way it'll work. So let's continue on, get this cleaned up. I'm just going to use the gunk. All right, let's take a look. All right, so that looks pretty good. I don't see any issues at all with this. I don't see any damage anywhere. It looks pretty good. So let's move on to the deck surfaces. All right, well, this would be a whole lot easier if I had the head studs out, but I don't want to get into that because by the time I get the head studs out, I can already have the block clean. So instead of wasting a whole bunch of time pulling head studs out, then clean the block and then have to put them back in, I think I'll just leave them in, because if you've ever pulled head studs out of a flathead, or if you've ever seen anybody do it, you know that it requires heat, and sometimes they'll break off in the block and then you end up having to drill them out. So it's just a nightmare to deal with. So if I'm not replacing them and putting aftermarket heads on, I just choose to leave them alone. I think that's the best thing to do. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna go ahead and work around them. It's gonna be aggravating working around the studs, but that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna get into trying to remove them and end up breaking one off. So let's go ahead and spray this thing down with some deep creep and get started cleaning. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and continue on with the deep creep and this scraper. I'm gonna get it scraped, cleaned, turn the camera off. I'll show you what it looks like in just a minute. All right, so I just sprayed it down with this gunk right here and used the scuff pad on it, and looking pretty good. So what I'm gonna do, spray it down now with this carbon choke cleaner just to get it all cleaned up good. Then I'm gonna show you what this thing looks like. All right, so we wanna check for cracks right here between the valve and the piston, from the valve seat to the cylinder wall, and I don't see any. But now I do see some pitting in that piston right there, so that almost looks like corrosion, like the cylinder might have had some water in it. But now I haven't got the other side cleaned up and got the cylinder walls clean yet, so I don't want to spin that engine over and take a look at what's going on down in that cylinder. I may find some pits in that cylinder wall, I don't know. We're gonna have to just move on and come back to that. But I don't see any cracks right here between that valve seat and cylinder wall on either one of those. Don't see any here or over here. So all that looks good. Now these valves have been replaced, that's pretty obvious. They don't have the Ford script on them. And I can also see right here, there's a sleeve in that cylinder. There's one right here in this cylinder. You can see that line that indicates there's a sleeve in there. And there's one in this cylinder right here also. But I don't see one here. So I think that's a standard bore, and then these are sleeved bores, sleeved back to standard. But now I did find a crack, and it is right there. I don't know if I can get this light where you can see it. Yeah, right there, you can see it. Between the bolt hole and the water passage. That crack is pretty much in all flatheads. If your flathead block does not have that crack, there's a good indication that block has never been run before. That is a very common crack, and you kind of come to expect that one in a flathead. But that is the only one I see on this side. It's just that one that you would expect to see, and that one's nothing to worry about. So I think it's safe to go ahead and clean up the other side. Check for cracks over there. All right, so I'm just going to repeat what I did on the other side, and I'll show you guys what it looks like in a few minutes. All right, so here's the driver's side cleaned up now. I didn't do quite as good a job as the other side. I need to run over this again, but I got it good enough we can see that there are no cracks right there. There are none there. And no cracks there. And no cracks right there. Now I do see the same cracks that I saw on the other side. Right there, between the head bolt and the water jacket, there's that typical crack. And I believe there's one on this side also. Yeah, you can just barely see it there. But like I said, that's always on a flathead. You're gonna have those. That's always expected. So, looks pretty good. All right, guys, well, I think it's going to be safe to say that this engine's going to be all right. I'm pretty confident that it is. I don't really see anything alarming as far as issues are concerned. There is one more place that a flathead's bad about cracking, but I'm not going to be able to check that area until I pull the oil pan off. So in the next video on this engine, what I'm going to have to do is go ahead and build a engine stand adapter so I can put this engine onto a stand and get it where I can get that oil pan off. So we got it cleaned up good enough now where I think that I'm going to be able to spin it over. I'm going to go ahead and mount that starter on here and spin it over a few times with the starter, and just make sure that everything in these cylinders is okay, because I cannot see what's below these pistons. So hopefully everything down in there is going to be all right. I do know that we have a couple of stuck valves, and that's pretty typical for an engine that that sits up a while. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do in the next video on this engine, I'll either be making the engine stand adapter, or I'll be working on getting those valves unstuck. But either way it goes, I think that we're gonna have a good engine here. Getting pretty excited about it, getting ready to hear this thing run. So in the next video, I'll be working on the trunk again. We're gonna go ahead and cut this piece to size, trim it down some, and go ahead and cut the bottom out of this trunk and get it ready for that to fit right there. So that's what's coming up in the next video. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out to the end of another video. I really appreciate it. Go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe to the channel if you've not already. I really do appreciate you hanging out with me another week at Phillips Hot Rod Garage. I'll see you guys in the next one.